I'm not sure the pieces fit in my head.
NG, Sojourner.
It was time to celebrate. The anniversary cake entered the room, carefully being held by Zargala. Wait, hold on, this isn't a TF2 fanfiction. This is a Raid fanfiction about its 2nd anniversary! This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, who's celebrating its 2nd anniversary this month. Now available on 2 platforms, PC and mobile, that dungeon battler we all know is currently filled with events and tournaments for its anniversary all the way through the middle of April. This is the most eventful time to join the fun, and as someone who likes to endlessly collect and hoard virtual items and people, Raid certainly fills that desire. Summoning men in a tavern is certainly my type of hobby, and if they aren't up to your fancy, you can upgrade their level, skill, and rank to bring them up to your standards. By checking out the link in the description or the fancy QR code appearing on screen right now, you'll receive a free epic champion Jotun, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 3 ancient shards to summon new champions. But, oh man, look at Jotun. Don't you just want to melt into his beard? And you can, as long as you claim him from your inbox in the next 30 days. Go ahead, click that button and claim your free man. Hold on. This is a Skymin video, meaning we gotta have some analysis alongside these examples. So, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Being able to express yourself is important, and people will find endless ways to do so. When it comes to expressing your love of something, one of the most common and easily done ways to do so is by writing a story on it. If you somehow don't know what fanfiction is, they are stories created by fans of, well, anything. TV shows, movies, games, and sometimes real people, the latter of which gets quite uncomfortable. Fanfics are stories where the author takes an existing source material and jumps off of it with their own ideas and interpretation. These stories don't generally have a great reputation in really any fandom. This is due to the often outlandish, fetishized, and self-serving entries that are posted online, and the fact that most aren't professional writers. TF2 is no different. Way back when, in the olden days of like 2013, I started reading TF2 fanfiction. I had actually made it a point to stay away from any and all fanfiction up until that point, but I was so interested in the characters that I wanted to see what other stories they could find themselves in. So I caved. I have long since stopped reading fanfiction of any kind, but there were stories that stuck around in my memory for better or worse. For this video, I've stuck with what I've known, which are the stories on fanfiction.net. I know these sites are pretty darn outdated today, but truthfully, I can't stand the layout of Archive of Our Own. Granted, both sites have terribly outdated UIs, but I'd rather stick with the one I know for the sake of not absolutely destroying my brain. Like any form of media, TF2 fanfiction has quite a large handful of tropes that tend to be repeated in stories. Since I wasted many hours of my youth reading this stuff, I figured I'd make something from my high school years useful, and show you the weird world of TF2 fanfiction and its many tropes. Many of these tropes come from just standard fanfiction ones, but with the context of TF2 slapped on it. So if you're a reader of other fanfiction, you'll notice some shared tropes. An important thing to know is that my examples are all being plucked from stories that were written in 2014 or earlier, so there will be some inconsistencies with certain things. Basically, if there's a name or a situation that doesn't line up with the current canon, chances are it was written before those pieces were released. Now I want to make something very clear before we get into the examples. Do not, I repeat, do not witch hunt the authors of these stories. These passages are being pulled to specifically show these tropes in their natural habitat. If you just can't scratch the itch to insult someone, then insult me. These examples are being pulled from stories I read. That's right, I've read each story in its entirety that I am presenting here in this video. I used to spend countless hours reading about the misadventures of the Badlands made up by fans. So if you need a punching bag, have at me. I already get insulted every day of my existence, I can take a little more.
The self-insert gets transported to TF2 land.
Let's start off with a trope that's common in every facet of fanfiction, the self-insert. Commonly, the self-insert is a normal person who gets thrown into the mercenaries' lives, often being transported into the TF2 world. Ever imagine yourself in the Merc Situations? Well, some people wrote 20 chapters of exactly that. This is a trope that's almost never handled well. But then again, as soon as you introduce the real world as a separate dimension, then there's not a whole lot you can do to really make it work. Common means of transportations include your standard computer screen teleportation.
5,
Lily's eyes shot back to the computer screen, still glowing white.
4, 3,
She felt her breath catch in her throat, as if she was suffocating on the air itself.
2.
What the hell? Why can't I move?
Lillian McAllister, get your ass to that computer and turn it off.
Shit. The computer's fans began to turn loudly and furiously inside the external hard drive, almost as if it were desperately trying to cool the computer down. The glow emanating from the monitor became almost blinding, filling the room. Lily's eyes closed tightly, and her free hand came up to shield her pale face. It almost burned to be standing in the light. The world began to dissolve around her. Lily's knees buckled and soon gave way beneath her. She couldn't tell whether or not she had felt the collision of her body with the carpeted floor of her dorm. But self-inserts aren't confined to just regular people. In the context of TF2, they're often made into original characters in the form of the mercenaries.
Original character Mercenary!
Did you know Pyro was a woman who had been scarred as a child and developed an obsession with fire and not a homosexual male as stated by MatPat of game theory fame? Creating original characters in the roles of the mercenaries is a popular trope as well. When authors do this, they essentially replace the characters we know, personality and all. For instance,
The name's Leslie. I'm your new engineer.
She said.
Alright, mates, this is our new engineer.
The anti-social Australian explained, getting various odd responses. The heavy and medic paying no attention to her along with the soldier, while the spy and Pyro were more interested, the Pyro running over to meet the new woman and the spy leaning against the wall beside her, a trademark grin on his lips.
Bonjour.
The spy grinned, gently picking up Leslie's hand to kiss it gently, causing the younger woman's cheeks to flare up a shade of pink.
OC mercenaries are often used to differentiate red and blue, with the blue teams taking up the OCs frequently since many believe red are the canonical team and therefore house the characters we all know and love. The problem with this trope is it essentially erases a character from the story. Heck, there are even stories that feature entirely original mercenaries, both in class and in character. To me, the appeal of fanfiction is to see the characters that you enjoy in situations that they haven't been put into officially. Replacing one or two characters with original creations is alright, especially if it complements the story, but completely replacing the whole cast kinda defeats the appeal. But that's a very subjective take on it. Speaking of new classes...
10th class!
Man, people love to fantasize about a 10th class in every corner of the community. The fanfiction side is no different. 10th classes are common tropes in TF2 fanfiction. Usually these are original characters that are shoehorned into the current cast of characters. These also frequently tend to have full-on bios and weapon descriptions attached to them.
Hailing from an unknown region of Japan and having made a name for herself across the country, the ninja is a master of stealth, acrobatics, confusion, and killing.
But not everyone likes to create their own characters. Sometimes they just want to write or read them in romantic situations.
Merc x Merc, also known as Hot Mercenary Action!
I feel like I don't have to explain shipping. Fans often want to see their favorite characters together, so when that happens, they either search for content already made of it, or they open up Microsoft Word and make it themselves, and by golly, TF2 is no exception. People love shipping the mercs together, with popular ones being Heavy Medic, Sniper Spy, Soldier Demo, and the only one that has any real canon merit, Scout and Pauling. Ships are the literal wet dreams of fanfiction authors and their readers, and it's super common to see both entire stories centered around the seduction, or just having it shoved into the side of an unrelated plot. The most common Merc ships come from the characters that have the most history. With Soldier and Demo, there's of course the whole war arc, where they became best friends that were forced to kill each other by the Administrator. As we know, friendship always leads to sex. Or, in the case of Sniper and Spy, you always want to keep your enemies close. In bed close. I have never personally liked shipping of any kind. I really don't care for the romantic rops of random character 1 and random character 2. But I'll be damned if I didn't say a lot of people do. Oh god, a lot of people do.
Not too long after, the camper van lurched to the side for a split second before returning to Earth with a cloud of dust. Sniper was—
Crikey!
He didn't to explain
Oh no.
on over on its side.
Max, stop trying to monetize my videos! As a sort of subsection, there are two very common things that are added within specifically TF2 fanfiction, those being written accents and original names. In terms of the accents, writers will typically write in each Merc's accent into their dialogue. This can vary from subtle differences to almost every single word written into an overly accented accent.
What is the matter with you today? Where is your battle spirit? I should have been home now, stuffing my face with damn cookies, but no, I had to stay here with you knuckleheads.
When only about half the main cast of characters had official names, at least at the time of these stories that were being written, authors ended up having to give fake names to some of the Mercs. Sometimes they'd ignore their real names and give them their own original ones, but most of the time they'd try to come up with something that was either based on their nationality or something a little bit more tangible.
Crossovers!
How long before these tumors kill us?
Shadow asked.
Let's see.
Gold said, murmuring an equation to himself after he was done.
3 days.
We all have 3 days to live, Gold stated dramatically, making Knuckles try and do the equation himself. All of a sudden, Unknown teleported out on the table, dressed like Aiden Pierce from Watch Dogs, holding a case of chili dogs on the side while somehow eating one. Ah, Watch Dogs, the best stealth game it never seems to be, Unknown said to nobody. And he then looked around while everyone was staring at him and said, "What?"
After the Gravel Wars.
Just like when a TV show ends, fans often want more. They want to see what happens after the finale. So do TF2 fans. A common plot is what happens to the Mercs after the Gravel and Robot Wars end. Sometimes this may take place a few years after as a sort of team reunion, and sometimes it takes place decades later with half the team dead.
Anyone die lately?
The Frenchman's head darted towards him, his eyebrows shut up in his hairline. The question was not expected, yet the man had an answer prepared.
You won't be happy to hear this. Nah, come on. I need to upgrade my phone book.
He said through a laugh.
No, wait. Your voice was void. Somebody did die. Oh, I'll guess. Was it the engineer?
Frowning upon the idea of making a death a guessing game, the former spy shook his head. He was aware that the sniper could not see his disapproval, but he had to do it.
No, he's still in Texas. He's still alright. Damn. Demo man? I swear, how the hell did that bastard get to keep one of his eyes? Meanwhile, I'm here blind as a bat. Lucky bastard. He croaked? No. Shit. Medic?
A radiant expression fell over the marksman. He grinned.
I knew it. He died a year ago. Dramatic situations.
Here's an unpopular opinion. I think TF2 can handle dramatic situations. There are a lot of people that dismiss the series for being put into dramatic situations, with the Saxy Award category being touted as examples as to why it can't. But I firmly believe that if handled well, it absolutely can. Remember, this is the series that gave us these sets of panels. I'm not crying. You're crying. But these panels actually show how TF2 needs to handle dramatic situations, with humor. In this scene, you have Spy disguising as Tom Jones and convincing Scout that he's his father. That's hilarious! But when you analyze the situation, Spy does it because he can't face Scout and admit he's his father. This is how TF2 should do drama. What I think a lot of people have issues with is when dramatic pieces take away the iconic style of humor TF2 is known for. Fanfiction is probably the worst offender of that, as many authors try and put the Mercs into serious situations, like fighting off a horde of zombies that have previously taken their teammates' lives.
I know for a fact that the Demo Man has one more grenade. I'll tell him to fire it where the infected line is thinnest. That's where you come in.
No words were needed. The spy knew exactly what he had to do. He saluted the soldier, one hand on his cigarette case. The creatures continued to hound after the man until he disappeared into thin air. The infected stopped, growling and screeching in anger and confusion. They looked around them to see where he could have gone, but by the time they had turned around, they saw him. Not the scout, but the soldier. He clenched his fist, prepared for their attack. His hand was wrapped around a grenade. He could feel the rush of wind as the infected ran towards him, and now they were only inches away. The Patriot placed his thumb on the pin, feeling incredibly cold under his skin. He had to do this, for his friends, for his mankind, for Harvest.
Parody/Satire.
What the
Sometimes stories don't exactly fall into the parody category.
Not at all. What's wrong with Soldier anyway?
Medic leaned forward.
Soldier is expecting.
Engie thought for a bit.
A letter? Paycheck? New weapon?
You could call it a new weapon.
Pauline continued.
The Administrator is keen on developing the world's strongest warrior through meticulous selection. She also never had children, so now she chose someone else to carry the plan forward.
I'm not sure the pieces fit in my head.
Engie, Soldier is pregnant. Sitcom Situation.
You know, you should really go for a dip. You're sweating like a pig.
The engineer said, looking at the sweat that drenched the spy's chest.
Wait.
Sighing and standing up.
Sounds familiar.
Fine.
The engineer opened the cooler and was searching around for a non-bonk soda. He found his soda and began to look back up.
You should
The engineer was at a loss for words as he looked back up. His eyes shot open and his jaw dropped as he saw the one thing he never ever wanted to see in his life. A naked spy. What? The spy cluelessly asked.
Wait, no. Even though I just spent this whole video essentially criticizing TF2 fanfiction, not every story I read was underwhelming. Like any form of content, there are great pieces out there, and TF2 definitely has some. While I no longer read this stuff, I do have some fond memories of some well-written or just entertaining fanfiction that handles the Merc's characteristics well. I'll Be Home for the Holidays is what I consider the best TF2 fanfiction. The story revolves around Sniper returning home to Australia after the Administrator is forced to give them a holiday break. Sniper returns home to Australia with Spy having reluctantly tagged along. The story introduces well-handled OCs in the form of Sniper's parents and the inhabitants of his hometown, a realistic friendship between Spy and Sniper, and an interesting plot revolving around Greyman being, the businessman he is. If you want something much more humorous, The Buggiest has an unfortunately unfinished story based on this gem of a soldier line.
Oh, hello, Gundorf! Where's Blasbo Babbins? Oh, there he is! Everyone's here. Labalos, Gimpy, Dumpy, Snoopy. Man, I wish Merasmus was around to see this magical turn of events.
Soldier attempting to tell the story of Lord of the Rings is a blast, even to someone who's not a fan of the story, world, franchise, whatever it is at this point.
Listen, Schweinhums! Grundolf said in an annoyingly bossy way once he was sure everybody was listening. Bralmo was murdered because of this! And he pried something shiny out of Bralbo's cold dead hands. It was a medal of honor, A real one, with a big #1 best carved on it. Everyone stared at the medal in awe because it was so manly and powerful. But even though it was so shiny, they could feel the evilness coming out of it like the smell of soup that's gone bad.
I'd like to remind you guys that, except for the Sonic crossover, I have read each and every one of these stories in full during my fanfiction years. I enjoyed each and every one of the stories I pulled examples of, and if you've been sitting here for the past however long this video turned out to be, and got a laugh from some of them, then you probably enjoyed them too. Not everything has to be of high quality for it to be entertaining. Not everything has to make sense. Sometimes these asinine plots can be entertaining to experience. And yes, I did used to write fanfiction. I want to thank everyone that helped me out with these readings. Trust me, you would not have liked hearing me attempt character voices. Big thanks to Lunar Scythe and Bubbaloo Cosplay especially for voicing the characters. And as always, I'd like to thank my supporters. Duggo Buggo, Malika Kidu, Julian Arnott, Sean O'Mani, That Monica, and Trinima. Special thanks to Damp Volcano 9204 for being my Patreon investor. You really help keep the channel going.